The meeting room on Station Alpha 7 was filled with the strangest collection of beings Jake Morrison had ever seen. The Zephyrians looked like tall, blue-skinned elves with silver eyes that never blinked. The Korath were massive, covered in thick armor that seemed to grow from their skin. The ethereal collective members floated in the air, their bodies looking like they were made of shifting light and shadow. Jake sat at the metal table with his hands folded, trying not to laugh. His crew of 12 humans stood behind him, all wearing their standard mining gear. They looked rough and dirty compared to the fancy aliens around them, but Jake didn't care. Commander Vexhal of the Zephyrians spoke first. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Captain Morrison, we appreciate your interest in this project, but I must tell you the facts. Kepler 442c is not just dangerous, it is impossible to work on." Jake nodded and took a sip from his beer bottle. "I'm listening." The Zephyrian pulled up a holographic display showing a planet that looked like it was on fire. Red and orange clouds swirled around it, and Jake could see massive storms throwing lightning in all directions. The surface temperature reaches 800 degrees Celsius on a cool day. The atmospheric pressure is 60 times what your species is used to. The storms carry sulfuric acid that can eat through our strongest metals in minutes. General Crox of the Korath Empire slammed his armored fist on the table. The sound echoed through the room like thunder. "My warriors are the bravest in the galaxy. We sent 3 teams to that cursed world. All of them died within an hour. Their armor, which can stop plasma cannons, melted like ice in a furnace." Jake raised an eyebrow. "That sounds pretty rough." An ethereal named Whisper of Stars floated closer to the table. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We attempted to extract the quantum resonance crystals using our matter manipulation abilities. The planet's environment disrupted our connection to the quantum field. Even we who have existed for millions of years found this world beyond our capabilities." Jake looked around the room at all the worried faces and glowing forms. He could see his crew behind him trying not to smile. Lisa Rodriguez, his chief engineer, was already sketching something in her notebook. Danny Cooper was taking pictures of the planet display with his phone. "So let me get this straight," Jake said, finishing his beer. "You need these crystals for faster-than-light communication, right?" Commander Vexhal nodded. "Without them, our entire galactic communication network will fail within 2 years. These crystals are the only ones in the galaxy that can handle the quantum frequencies needed for instant communication across vast distances. And they're buried deep in the planet's core? Approximately 500 kilometers below the surface," General Crox growled. "Deeper than any mining operation has ever gone, through layers of molten rock and poisonous gas." Jake stood up and walked over to the holographic display. He studied the swirling storms and the readouts showing temperature and pressure. Behind him, he heard Rick Barnes, his demolitions expert, whisper to Amy Phillips, their geologist. "This is going to be fun." "How much time do we have?" Jake asked. Whisper of Stars answered. "Our projections show that the current crystals powering the network will fail in exactly 347 of your Earth days. After that, the galaxy will be cut off from instant communication." Jake nodded and turned back to face the assembled aliens. Every eye, sensor, and glowing orb was focused on him. The room was completely silent except for the hum of the space station's life support systems. "Well," Jake said, reaching into his pocket and pulling out another beer. "That doesn't sound too bad." The aliens looked at each other in confusion. Commander Vexhal's silver eyes actually showed emotion for the first time. "Captain Morrison, I don't think you understand the severity of this situation. This is not just difficult, it is physically impossible. The laws of physics make this task impossible to complete." Jake popped open his beer and took a long drink. He could hear Lisa behind him making calculation sounds under her breath. Danny was still taking pictures and Amy was now studying mineral composition charts on her tablet. "You know," Jake said, looking around the room. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about things people said were impossible. Flying machines, going to the moon, mining asteroids, talking to people on the other side of the planet instantly. Funny thing about impossible things." He walked back to the table and set his beer down next to Commander Vexhal. The alien looked at the brown bottle like it might explode. "They usually just mean nobody's tried the right way yet." General Crox leaned forward, his armor creaking. "Captain, my species has conquered 47 worlds. We have technology that can crack planets in half. If we say something is impossible, it means our greatest minds have tried every possible solution." Jake smiled. But have you tried it the human way? Whisper of stars floated higher in the air, its form shifting from blue to purple. What could humans possibly know that we don't? We have studied this problem for 300 years. Jake looked back at his crew. They were all grinning now. Lisa had filled up 6 pages in her notebook with sketches and calculations. Rick was measuring something with his hands and making explosion gestures. Amy was nodding at whatever she was reading on her tablet. Hold my beer, Jake said, sliding the bottle toward Commander Vex Hale. The Zephyrian stared at the bottle like Jake had just handed him a live snake. I don't understand this reference. Jake started rolling up his sleeves. It's a human thing. When we're about to do something really stupid that might just work, we hand our beer to the nearest person and get to work. He turned to his crew. All right, people. We've got a planet that's trying to kill everything that gets near it, crystals buried deeper than anyone's ever dug, and less than a year to pull off the impossible. Lisa, how long do you need to modify our equipment? Lisa grinned and closed her notebook. Give me 3 days and access to their spare parts warehouse. Danny, can you plot a course that won't get us killed on approach? Danny looked up from his phone. I can get us there in one piece. Getting back might be trickier. Jake clapped his hands together. Perfect. Amy, Rick, start working on extraction plans. Helen, I need you to figure out how to keep us alive long enough to do the job. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans started talking excitedly among themselves, pulling out tools and tablets and starting to plan. Commander Vexhal picked up Jake's beer bottle and stared at it. Captain Morrison, the Zephyrian said quietly, are you certain about this course of action? Jake was already walking toward the door with his crew. He stopped and looked back at the room full of worried aliens. Commander, my species spent thousands of years figuring out how to live on a planet that's constantly trying to kill us. We've got volcanoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, poisonous animals, deadly diseases, and weather that changes every 5 minutes. We call it home. He pointed at the holographic display of Kepler 442c with its storms and acid rain and molten surface. That just looks like Tuesday to me. The new frontier looked like every other human mining ship in the fleet. It was big, blocky, and covered in dents from years of hard work. The paint was chipped in places, and there were patches welded over spots where asteroids had hit the hull. To Jake Morrison, it was the most beautiful ship in the galaxy. Lisa Rodriguez stood in the cargo bay with her sleeves rolled up and grease on her hands. Around her, the floor was covered with alien technology that the Galactic Council had provided. Shiny metal devices with no visible controls sat next to boxes full of crystals that glowed different colors. Everything looked expensive and delicate. This stuff is pretty, Lisa said, picking up a Zephyrian heat shield that looked like it was made of liquid silver. But it's not going to work. Danny Cooper was sitting on a crate nearby, eating a sandwich and watching Lisa work. What's wrong with it? Lisa held up the heat shield and pointed to a small symbol on the side. See this? This means it's rated for temperatures up to 400 degrees. The planet we're going to hit's 800 degrees on a good day. She tossed the shield aside and picked up a Korath pressure suit. The thing was massive, covered in thick armor plating that looked like it could stop a tank shell. And this beauty is designed for their physiology. It would fit 3 of us inside, and we still couldn't move our arms. Rick Barnes walked over carrying a toolbox that had seen better days. His toolbox was held together with duct tape and contained tools that no engineering manual had ever described. What about their mining equipment? Lisa pointed to a device that looked like a chrome torpedo with spinning parts. That's their deep core drill. It uses quantum resonance to cut through rock. Very advanced, very precise. Very useless when the quantum field gets disrupted by sulfuric acid storms. Amy Phillips looked up from her tablet where she was studying geological surveys of Kepler 442c. So what do we do? Build everything from scratch? Lisa grinned and picked up her welding torch. We do what humans do best. We take their fancy technology and we make it work with our not-so-fancy technology. She walked over to the New Frontier's original mining equipment. It didn't look like much compared to the alien gear. The drill was painted yellow and had more moving parts than necessary. The heat shields were thick and heavy, made from good old-fashioned steel and ceramic. The pressure suits looked like they belonged in a museum. Our stuff is simple, ugly, and built to last. Their stuff is pretty, advanced, and breaks when you look at it wrong. But if we combine them right... Lisa picked up the Zephyrian heat shield and her welding torch. Sparks flew as she started attaching the alien technology to their human equipment. We might just create something that can survive that hell planet. Dr. Helen Torres walked into the cargo bay carrying a cup of coffee and a stack of papers. She was the team's physicist and the smartest person Jake had ever met. She was also the only person who could explain quantum mechanics while making it sound simple. "I've been running calculations on the planet's atmosphere," Helen said, setting her papers on a workbench. "The good news is that the acid storms follow predictable patterns. They happen every 6 hours and last for about 30 minutes. Danny finished his sandwich and wiped his hands on his pants. "What's the bad news?" "The bad news is that during those 30 minutes, the acid concentration is strong enough to dissolve our ship if we're not protected." Rick Barnes opened his toolbox and started pulling out various bottles and containers. "I can make something that will neutralize acid. My grandmother's recipe for cleaning ovens scaled up about 1,000 times." Helen looked at Rick's collection of household chemicals with concern. "Are you sure that's safe?" Rick shrugged. "It worked on my grandmother's oven, and that thing was pretty bad. Besides, what's the worst that could happen?" Everyone in the cargo bay stopped what they were doing and stared at Rick. In their line of work, asking, "What's the worst that could happen?" was like asking the universe to show you exactly what the worst thing was. "Forget I said that," Rick said quickly. Lisa went back to welding alien and human technology together. The combination looked strange, like someone had tried to build a race car using parts from a tank and a spaceship. But as she worked, the equipment started to make sense. The Zephyrian heat shields provided advanced temperature regulation, while the human steel backing gave them the durability to actually survive being used. Amy walked over to examine Lisa's work. "Will it hold together under that kind of pressure?" "It'll hold," Lisa said confidently. "Human engineering isn't pretty, but it works. We've been fixing things with duct tape and determination for centuries." Jake walked into the cargo bay carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Helen and looked around at the organized chaos his crew was creating. Alien technology was being modified, welded, duct taped, and somehow improved by human ingenuity. "How long until we're ready?" Jake asked. Lisa wiped sweat from her forehead and left a streak of grease behind. "Give me 2 more days. I need to test all these combinations and make sure they won't explode when we need them most." "What about the drilling equipment?" Rick held up what looked like a stick of dynamite with ethereal quantum crystals taped to it. "I'm working on a hybrid approach. Their quantum drill for precision, our explosives for when precision isn't enough." Helen nearly choked on her coffee. "You're combining quantum technology with explosives?" "Sure," Rick said casually. "The quantum field can cut through the rock precisely, and the explosives can clear out the debris. It's like surgery with a sledgehammer backup plan." Danny was studying star charts and plotting their course to Kepler 442c. "I've found 3 different approach vectors. One's fast but dangerous, one's safe but slow, and one's completely crazy but might just work." Jake smiled. "Which one are you recommending?" "The completely crazy one, of course. We use the planet's gravitational field and its 3 moons to slingshot our way through the storm systems. If we time it right, we can avoid the worst of the weather and land during a calm period." Amy was taking notes while Danny explained the orbital mechanics. "How long do we have on the surface before the next storm hits?" "About 5 hours if everything goes perfectly." Lisa looked up from her welding. 5 hours to set up, drill 500 kilometers down, extract enough crystals for the entire galaxy, and get back to the ship?" Danny nodded. "Like I said, it's completely crazy." Jake finished his coffee and set the cup down on a workbench. Around him, his crew was transforming impossible alien technology into something that might actually work. They were taking equipment designed by some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy and making it better using human common sense and a willingness to try things that probably shouldn't work. "Any word from our alien friends?" Helen asked. Jake pulled out his communication device. It had been buzzing with messages all day. "Commander Vexhel has called 6 times asking if we need assistance. General Croc sent us detailed burial instructions for when we don't come back. And Whisper of Stars keeps sending us poetry about the futility of fighting against impossible odds." Lisa laughed and went back to work. "They really don't think we can do this, do they?" "Nope," Jake said. "Which means they're in for one hell of a surprise." Rick held up his latest creation, a device that looked like it had been built by someone who had never seen proper engineering equipment, but had a lot of enthusiasm and access to a hardware store. "This should neutralize acid, regulate temperature, provide structural support, and make really good coffee." Helen stared at the device. How does it make coffee? Rick pointed to a small attachment on the side. I welded Lisa's backup coffee maker into the cooling system. The heat exchange process brews a perfect cup every time. Jake looked around at his crew and their impossible inventions. In less than 48 hours, they would be attempting something that every advanced civilization in the galaxy had declared impossible. They would be using equipment that looked like it belonged in a junkyard, following a plan that made no sense to anyone with proper training, and doing it all with the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of making impossible things work. "All right, people," Jake said. "Let's go show the galaxy what impossible really looks like." The view from the New Frontiers Bridge was spectacular and terrifying. Kepler 442c filled the main screen, a planet that looked like it was trying to kill anything that came near it. Massive storms swirled across the surface, throwing lightning bolts the size of skyscrapers. The entire planet glowed with an angry red light that came from the molten rock beneath its thin crust. Jake Morrison sat in the captain's chair, drinking coffee from a mug that said "World's Okayest Captain" in faded letters. He was watching the storm patterns and comparing them to Danny Cooper's navigation charts. Behind him, his crew was making final preparations for what every alien in the galaxy expected to be their last day alive. "Storm cycle analysis complete," Amy Phillips called out from her station. "We've got a weather window opening up in 17 minutes. Clear skies for about 5 hours, then all hell breaks loose again." Danny was at the pilot station, his hands dancing over controls that looked like they belonged in an old Earth airplane. Approach vector locked in. "We're going to thread the needle between 3 different storm systems, use the gravity of Moon Kepler 442c1 for a speed boost, and land right in the middle of the only calm spot on the planet." Lisa Rodriguez was in the engineering section, surrounded by displays showing the status of their jury-rigged equipment. Everything was green, which in human engineering meant it probably wouldn't explode immediately. "All systems ready, Captain. Our heat shields are holding steady. Pressure suits are tested and certified, and Rick's acid neutralizer is loaded and ready to deploy." Rick Barnes was checking his equipment one more time. His collection of mining charges, quantum drills, and household chemistry looked like the contents of a mad scientist's garage sale. "Explosives are primed, backup explosives are ready, and emergency backup explosives are standing by. I also packed some extra coffee because you never know." Dr. Helen Torres was monitoring the quantum field readings and trying not to think about all the things that could go wrong. "The planet's magnetic field is interfering with our sensors, but I'm getting some readings from the crystal deposits. They're definitely down there, about 500 kilometers below the surface in a cavern system that shouldn't exist according to standard geology." Jake finished his coffee and stood up. Through the view screen, he could see Kepler 442c getting larger and more frightening by the minute. The planet looked like it was made of fire and anger, with an atmosphere that seemed to be actively hostile to anything that contained organized matter. "Communications? Any word from our alien friends?" The communications officer, Tony Martinez, looked up from his station. "Commander Vexhal is requesting hourly updates on our status. General Crox is standing by with a recovery fleet to retrieve our remains. And Whisper of Stars just sent us a 14-page poem about heroic sacrifice and the beauty of death in service to the greater good." Lisa laughed from her engineering station. "They're really not expecting us to come back, are they?" "Nope," Jake said. "Which means we're going to have to prove them wrong." The ship shook as they entered Kepler 442c's atmosphere. The air outside was thick with sulfuric acid and other chemicals that would dissolve most known materials in minutes. The temperature readings climbed steadily as they descended through layers of poisonous clouds. "Hull temperature rising," Lisa called out. 400 degrees and climbing. Heat shields are holding, but we're pushing into uncharted territory." Danny was fighting with the ship's controls as atmospheric turbulence tried to tear them apart. "This is like flying through a hurricane made of acid and fire." "I'm having the time of my life." The ship bucked and rolled as they dropped through the storm layer. Outside the view screen, lightning flashed constantly, creating an electric light show that would have been beautiful if it wasn't trying to kill them. The acid rain hit their hull with sounds like bullets hitting metal. 600 degrees, Lisa announced. "Heat shields are working perfectly. Rick's grandmother's oven cleaner is neutralizing the acid rain like it's supposed to. All systems are green." Amy was watching her geological scanners and frowning at the readings. "I'm seeing some weird formations down there. The rock layers don't match what the alien surveys predicted. It looks like this planet has been through some major changes recently." "Recently meaning what?" Jake asked. Recently meaning sometime in the last million years. The entire crust has been reshaped by volcanic activity. The crystal deposits might be in different locations than the aliens thought. Rick looked up from his equipment. Is that good news or bad news? It means we're going to have to improvise, Amy said. The good news is that volcanic activity might have brought some crystals closer to the surface. The bad news is that we're basically flying blind. The ship finally broke through the bottom of the storm layer and emerged into the strangest landscape any of them had ever seen. The surface of Kepler 442c was a maze of crystal formations, lava flows, and geysers that shot superheated steam hundreds of meters into the air. Everything glowed with its own light, creating an alien rainbow of colors that shouldn't exist in nature. Landing site acquired, Danny announced, setting down in a clear area between two lava flows. Try not to step in anything that's glowing. The new frontier touched down with a heavy thud that shook the entire ship. Through the view screen, they could see their new temporary home. It looked like the surface of a planet that was actively trying to kill anything that lived on it. Exterior temperature holding steady at 780 degrees, Lisa reported. Atmospheric pressure is 62 times Earth normal. Air composition is mostly sulfur dioxide with trace amounts of about 40. Different chemicals that don't have names. Yet, Jake stood up and headed for the cargo bay where their modified pressure suits were waiting. All right, people. We've got 5 hours to do the impossible. Let's go make history. The cargo bay was filled with equipment that looked like it had been designed by someone who had never seen proper engineering, but had a lot of enthusiasm and access to every hardware store in the galaxy. Their pressure suits were thick, heavy, and covered with additional armor plating that Lisa had welded on during their approach to the planet. Remember, people, Helen said as they started putting on their suits, the atmospheric pressure out there will crush you if your suit fails. The temperature will cook you if your cooling system stops working. The air will dissolve your lungs if you breathe it. And the ground might be unstable because of all the volcanic activity. Rick finished sealing his helmet and picked up his equipment pack. So basically, it's like working in any other dangerous industrial site, except more so. Amy was loading geological survey equipment into her pack. I'm reading massive crystal formations about 2 kilometers east of here. If the deposits go as deep as the aliens think, we should be able to find an access point somewhere in that area. Danny was staying with the ship to monitor their progress and keep the engines ready for a quick takeoff. I'll keep track of the weather patterns. You've got about 4 hours and 30 minutes before the next storm system hits. Jake sealed his helmet and activated his suit systems. The heads-up display showed green lights for everything important and yellow lights for everything that might become a problem later. It was the best they could hope for under the circumstances. Lisa, how are our suits holding up? Lisa's voice came through the comm system with a slight distortion from the electromagnetic interference. All systems functional. The alien heat regulation technology is working perfectly with our life support systems. Rick's acid neutralizer is keeping the exterior clean, and the additional armor plating should protect us from falling rocks. The cargo bay door opened, revealing the hostile surface of Kepler 442c. The air outside shimmered with heat, and they could see geysers of superheated steam erupting from cracks in the ground. Everything was bathed in an orange glow that came from the molten rock beneath their feet. Jake stepped onto the surface of the planet and immediately felt the suit's cooling systems working harder to keep him alive. The ground beneath his feet was solid, but he could feel the vibration of moving lava somewhere below. First humans on Kepler 442c, he announced over the comm. The weather's terrible, the scenery wants to kill us, and the air is unbreathable. Feels like home. Rick stepped out beside him and looked around at the alien landscape. You know, if we could figure out how to install some air conditioning and maybe tone down the lava, this place might make a nice vacation spot. Amy was already taking readings with her geological equipment. I'm detecting strong crystal signatures in multiple directions. This place is loaded with exactly what we're looking for. The aliens were right about the deposits, they just didn't know how to get to them safely. Helen activated her quantum field sensors and started scanning for the best drilling locations. I'm reading quantum resonance signatures that are off the charts. These crystals are not just present, they're practically calling to us. Jake looked around at the impossible landscape they were standing on. Every alien civilization in the galaxy had declared this planet too dangerous for any form of mining operation. They had spent centuries trying to figure out how to extract crystals from this world and failed every time. But Jake and his crew were humans, and humans had a long history of looking at impossible situations and finding ways to make them work. They had survived ice ages, Vulcan 2 hours into their mission on Kepler 442c. Jake Morrison and his crew had already accomplished more than 3 centuries of alien expeditions combined. They had found the crystal deposits, established a secure drilling site, and started extraction procedures that should have been impossible on a planet that was actively trying to kill them. Amy Phillips was standing next to a formation of crystal spires that rose from the ground like frozen lightning. Her geological scanners were going crazy with readings that didn't match anything in her textbooks. "These formations are incredible," she said over the comm system. "The crystals are growing in patterns that create natural amplification chambers. It's like the planet is building its own quantum communication network." Rick Barnes had set up his drilling equipment in a relatively flat area between 2 lava flows. His hybrid creation, part alien quantum technology and part human explosives, was working better than anyone had expected. "First borehole is down 200 meters and going strong," he reported. "The quantum drill is cutting through rock like butter, and when it hits something too tough, I just add a little more bang to the equation." Lisa Rodriguez was monitoring all their equipment from a portable control station she had assembled from spare parts and determination. "All systems are green across the board," she announced. "Suit temperatures are stable, air recycling is working perfectly, and Rick's acid neutralizer has created a protective bubble around our entire work area." Dr. Helen Torres was taking quantum field measurements that were rewriting everything the galaxy knew about crystal formation. "I'm reading resonance patterns that suggest these crystals are not just naturally occurring," she said excitedly. "They're part of a larger network that extends through the planet's core. We're not just mining crystals, we're tapping into a planetary-scale quantum computer." Jake was coordinating the operation while keeping an eye on their time limit. They had less than 3 hours before the next storm system would force them to take shelter or leave the planet. Through his helmet's display, he could see weather data from the new frontier, showing massive electrical storms building on the horizon. "Danny, what's our status up there?" Jake called to their pilot. Danny Cooper's voice came through with some static from the electromagnetic interference. "Storm system is building faster than predicted, but we're still within safe parameters. I'm tracking 3 separate weather fronts that should merge in about 2 hours and 40 minutes. When they do, this place is going to get very unfriendly very quickly." Jake walked over to Rick's drilling operation and watched the progress displays. The borehole was now down 350 meters and descending steadily through layers of rock that should have stopped any conventional drilling equipment. Rick's combination of alien precision and human brute force was working exactly as he had promised. "How deep do we need to go?" Jake asked Amy. Amy checked her readings and compared them to the alien surveys. "The main crystal chamber should be around 500 meters down, but I'm getting readings that suggest there are smaller deposits much closer to the surface. We might be able to get what we need without going all the way to the core." Rick looked up from his control panel with a grin that was visible even through his helmet faceplate. "Good thing, because I'm starting to run low on the really big explosives. I've got enough left for maybe 6 more major obstacles." Lisa was watching her monitoring station with growing amazement. "I'm getting data feeds from the alien observation ships in orbit. They're trying to figure out how we're surviving down here, let alone actually accomplishing the mission." "What are they saying?" Jake asked. "Commander Vexhal has requested detailed technical specifications for our equipment. General Crox wants to know if we're using some kind of unknown human military technology. And Whisper of Stars just sent us a poem about the impossibility of what we're doing." Helen looked up from her quantum field sensors. "They're not wrong to be surprised. According to everything we know about physics and engineering, what we're doing should be impossible. But we're not following their rules." What do you mean?" Amy asked. Helen pointed to Rick's drilling operation. "Look at what Rick is doing. He's using quantum technology to precisely cut through rock, then using chemical explosives to clear the debris. No alien species would ever think to combine those 2 approaches, because they're trained to think that advanced technology is always better than primitive technology." Rick laughed and activated another drilling charge. "My grandfather always said that the best tool for any job is the one that works. Doesn't matter if it's fancy or simple, as long as it gets the job done." The drilling operation reached 450 meters, and suddenly all of Amy's scanners started screaming with alerts. "I'm reading massive crystal formations directly below us," she announced. "The chamber is bigger than the alien surveys predicted, and the crystal concentration is off the charts." Jake looked at the readings over Amy's shoulder. According to her equipment, they were sitting on top of enough quantum resonance crystals to power the galaxy's communication network for decades. How much can we extract in the time we have left? Amy ran calculations on her tablet while monitoring the drilling progress. If Rick can open up the chamber and we can get our extraction equipment down there, we can pull out more crystals in the next 2 hours than the aliens thought existed on the entire planet. Rick was already preparing his largest drilling charge, a device that looked like it had been built by someone who understood explosives, but had never heard of safety regulations. Give me 10 minutes to clear the final layer of rock, and you'll have access to more crystals than you know what to do with. Lisa was coordinating the extraction equipment, a collection of human mining tools that had been modified with alien technology. Extraction systems are ready to deploy. Once Rick opens up that chamber, we can start pulling crystals out of there faster than you can count them. Jake checked their time limit again. They had 2 hours and 15 minutes before the storm system would force them to evacuate. It was going to be close, but if everything went according to plan, they would complete the mission with time to spare. All right, people, Jake announced. Rick, blow the chamber. Amy, guide the extraction equipment. Lisa, monitor everything and make sure we don't break anything important. Helen, keep tracking those quantum fields and let us know if anything unusual happens. Rick activated his largest drilling charge and stepped back to a safe distance. Fire in the hole, he announced cheerfully. The explosion was massive. It shook the ground for kilometers around and sent a geyser of superheated steam shooting into the air. When the debris settled, they found themselves looking down into a cavern that glittered with more crystals than any of them had ever seen. Holy cow, Amy whispered. It's like looking into a geode the size of a football stadium. Helen's quantum sensors were practically overloading from the readings. The resonance patterns down there are incredible. These crystals have been growing in perfect harmony for millions of years. They're not just communication crystals, they're works of art. Lisa deployed the extraction equipment, and within minutes they were pulling up crystals that sparkled with their own inner light. Each crystal was perfect, exactly the right size and quantum frequency for galactic communication networks. Jake activated his comm system to contact the orbital observation ships. This is Captain Morrison calling all alien vessels. You might want to update your mission reports. Commander Vexhal's voice came through with obvious amazement. Captain Morrison, our sensors are showing impossible readings from your location. Are you actually extracting crystals from the planet's core? Not just extracting, Jake replied, watching as Lisa's equipment pulled up another container full of perfect crystals. We're pulling up enough crystals to power your communication network for the next 50 years. General Crox's voice was filled with disbelief. How is this possible? Our greatest military engineers declared this mission impossible. Jake looked around at his crew, who were working with the kind of calm efficiency that came from a lifetime of making impossible things work. Rick was already preparing to open up a second crystal chamber. Amy was mapping out additional extraction sites. Lisa was monitoring systems that were working better than their specifications said they should. Helen was taking measurements that were rewriting the textbooks. General, Jake said, you made the mistake of thinking that impossible means it can't be done. We just figured that impossible means nobody's tried the right way yet. Whisper of Star's ethereal voice floated through the comm system. Captain Morrison, you and your crew are accomplishing something that we believed was beyond the reach of any physical beings. How do you explain this success? Jake picked up one of the crystals and held it up to examine its perfect structure. Through his helmet display, he could see that they had already extracted enough crystals to complete their mission 3 times over, and they still had nearly 2 hours of safe working time left. Whisper of Stars, Jake said. My species has been doing impossible things for thousands of years. We survived ice ages with nothing but fire and sharp sticks. We learned to fly when everyone said it was impossible. We went to space when people said. The storm hit Kepler 442c exactly when Danny Cooper's weather predictions said it would. But by then, Jake Morrison and his crew had already loaded enough quantum resonance crystals onto the new frontier to power galactic communications for the next century. They were sitting in the ship's galley, drinking coffee and watching through the viewports as the planet outside tried to kill everything within 1,000 kilometers. Lightning bolts the size of skyscrapers crashed into the ground every few seconds. The wind was howling at speeds that would have torn apart most structures. Acid rain was falling so heavily that it looked like the planet was crying tears made of pure destruction. The temperature outside had climbed to over 900 degrees Celsius, and the atmospheric pressure was strong enough to crush most known materials. Jake was eating a sandwich and reviewing their mission report on his tablet. According to the numbers, they had extracted 847 perfect crystals, mapped 17 additional deposit sites, and collected enough geological data to keep alien scientists busy for decades. The mission that was supposed to take weeks had been completed in 4 hours. So, Lisa Rodriguez said, taking a sip of her coffee. Anyone else think that was easier than expected? Rick Barnes looked up from cleaning his equipment. His tools were still covered in rock dust and crystal fragments from the extraction operation. I've had harder days fixing my truck. At least the planet didn't try to charge me for parts. Amy Phillips was studying her geological surveys with growing amazement. I'm still trying to figure out how the aliens missed so many crystal deposits. These formations are everywhere once you know how to look for them. Dr. Helen Torres was analyzing quantum field readings that were going to revolutionize everything the galaxy knew about crystal formation and planetary geology. I think the problem was that they were overthinking it. They spent so much time trying to develop advanced solutions that they missed the simple approaches. Danny was monitoring the storm systems from the pilot station. Weather's getting worse out there. We're looking at continuous storms for the next 12 hours, then a brief clearing period before the next system moves in. Jake finished his sandwich and walked over to the communications station. The display was filled with incoming messages from every alien ship in orbit around the planet. Commander Vexhal had sent 47 requests for detailed technical specifications. General Crox was demanding to know if humans had been hiding advanced military technology. Whisper of Stars had composed an epic poem about the impossibility of what they had accomplished. Any word from the Galactic Council? Jake asked Tony Martinez, their communications officer. Tony looked up from his station with a grin. They've called an emergency session to discuss the implications of our success. Apparently, completing an impossible mission ahead of schedule has caused some political problems. What kind of problems? The kind where 3 different alien civilizations have been telling everyone for 3 centuries that this mission was impossible. And now they have to explain why a dozen humans did it in 4 hours using equipment that looks like it was built in someone's garage. Lisa laughed and refilled her coffee cup. To be fair, most of it was built in someone's garage. My garage specifically. Rick was organizing his explosives for the return trip. He had used less than half of his supplies, which meant he was already planning bigger and better mining operations for their next impossible mission. I'm thinking we should look into that black hole mining idea Jake mentioned. I bet I could figure out how to extract materials from an event horizon. Helen nearly choked on her coffee. Please tell me you're not serious about mining black holes. Why not? Rick asked. We just proved that impossible doesn't mean impossible. It just means we haven't figured out the right approach yet. Amy was taking notes for her geological report. I'm going to need about 6 months to analyze all the data we collected. These crystal formations are unlike anything we've ever seen. They seem to be growing in response to the planet's quantum field fluctuations. Jake walked over to the viewport and looked out at the storm raging across Kepler 442c's surface. The planet was beautiful in its own terrifying way, like a work of art created by someone who specialized in natural disasters. Lightning danced across the sky in patterns that almost looked deliberate, and the acid rain created rainbow effects as it dissolved everything it touched. You know, Jake said, I'm starting to understand why the aliens had so much trouble with this place. Lisa joined him at the viewport. Yeah? They were trying to fight the planet instead of working with it. They saw the storms and the acid and the heat as obstacles to overcome instead of tools to use. Amy looked up from her notes. What do you mean? Jake pointed to one of the crystal formations they had discovered. Those crystals are growing in specific patterns because of the electromagnetic fields generated by the storms. The acid rain is actually part of the formation process. The heat and pressure are creating the exact conditions needed for quantum resonance crystal growth. Helen was running calculations on her tablet. You're right. The planet isn't just storing crystals, it's manufacturing them. The entire ecosystem is one massive crystal-growing operation that's been running for millions of years. Rick finished cleaning his equipment and packed everything away. So basically, we figured out how to harvest crystals from a natural crystal farm that the aliens didn't recognize as a crystal farm. Exactly, Jake said. They were so focused on the dangers that they missed the opportunities. Danny called from the pilot's station. "I'm getting incoming transmissions from the alien observation fleet. They want to know when we're planning to leave the planet." Jake checked the mission timeline on his tablet. According to their original plan, they should have been on the planet for at least 2 weeks, assuming they could survive long enough to extract any crystals at all. Instead, they had completed the mission in 4 hours and were now waiting out a storm while planning their next impossible project. "Tell them we'll be ready to depart as soon as the weather clears. Should be about 12 hours from now." Tony transmitted the message and immediately received responses from all 3 alien fleets. "Commander Vexhal is requesting permission to send a technical team to examine our equipment. General Crox wants to discuss hiring human engineering consultants for Korath military projects. And Whisper of Stars is asking if we'd be interested in a cultural exchange program." Lisa was already sketching plans for improved mining equipment in her notebook. "I could design better gear for their next impossible mission. This whole experience has given me some ideas about combining alien technology with human engineering." Rick was reading through his explosives manual, looking for techniques that might work in even more extreme environments. "I'm thinking we should start a consulting business. Morrison and Associates, making the impossible possible since yesterday." Amy was organizing her geological samples and planning research projects that would take years to complete. "The amount of scientific data we collected today is going to keep researchers busy for decades. We've basically discovered an entirely new type of planetary ecosystem." Helen was still running calculations and shaking her head in amazement. "The quantum field effects we measured are going to require new physics equations. We didn't just complete a mining mission. We made discoveries that will change how the galaxy understands crystal formation." Jake looked around the galley at his crew, who were already planning their next impossible project, while casually discussing the scientific breakthroughs they had made during what was supposed to be the most dangerous mission in galactic history. They had treated a planet that terrified entire alien civilizations like just another day at the office. "So," Jake said, "what do we want to do next?" Danny looked up from his weather monitoring station. "I've been thinking about that neutron star mining operation the Ethereals mentioned. They said it was physically impossible to extract materials from a neutron star's surface." Lisa's eyes lit up with engineering possibilities. "Neutron star mining? That sounds like fun. The gravity wells would be challenging, but I bet we could figure out a way to work with them instead of against them." Rick was already making notes about explosive techniques that might work in extreme gravitational fields. "I could probably adapt my acid neutralizer formula to work with neutron star radiation. It's basically the same principle, just scaled up a few million times." Amy was thinking about the geological implications. Neutron stars have crystallized surfaces made of materials that don't exist anywhere else in the universe. The research possibilities are incredible. Helen was running preliminary calculations. The physics would be completely different. But if we could figure out how to work in that environment, we could extract materials that would revolutionize technology across the galaxy. Jake smiled and finished his coffee. Outside the viewport, the storm was still raging across Kepler 442c's surface, but it no longer looked threatening. It looked like weather, the kind of natural phenomenon that humans had been dealing with for thousands of years. "All right, people," Jake said. "As soon as we get home and deliver these crystals, we start planning our next impossible mission. And this time, let's try to pick something that will really challenge us." The crew laughed and went back to their planning. Through the viewport, the docking bay of Station Alpha 7 had never seen anything like the scene that greeted the New Frontier's return. Alien dignitaries from across the galaxy had gathered to witness what many were calling the most significant mining achievement in galactic history. The humans had not only survived Kepler 442c, they had made it look easy. Jake Morrison walked down the ship's boarding ramp carrying a small container that held enough quantum resonance crystals to power galactic communications for months. Behind him, his crew was unloading crate after crate of additional crystals, each one perfect and ready for immediate use in the galaxy's most critical technology systems. Commander Vexahal of the Zephyrians was waiting at the bottom of the ramp, his silver eyes wide with amazement. Beside him stood General Crox of the Korath Empire, his massive armored form practically vibrating with excitement. Whisper of Stars floated nearby, its ethereal body shifting through colors that had no names in any known language. "Captain Morrison," Commander Vexhal said, his voice filled with wonder, "our sensors, indicate that you extracted 847 perfect crystals from Kepler 442c. This number exceeds our total galactic supply by a factor of 12. Jake set down his container and shook the Zephyrian's hand. Actually, it's 863 crystals. We found a few more while we were packing up to leave. General Croc stepped forward, his armor clanking with each movement. Captain, my species has been trying to complete this mission for 300 years. Our greatest military engineers spent decades developing plans that all ended in failure. How did you accomplish this task in 4 hours? Jake looked back at his crew, who were cheerfully unloading equipment that looked like it had been built in someone's garage, but had just accomplished the impossible. Lisa Rodriguez was explaining their heat shield modifications to a group of fascinated Zephyrian engineers. Rick Barnes was demonstrating his acid neutralizer formula to Korath military specialists who were taking detailed notes. Amy Phillips was sharing geological data that was making alien scientists recalculate everything they thought they knew about planetary crystal formation. General, Jake said, we use the same approach we always use. We looked at what everyone said was impossible, figured out why it was supposed to be impossible, and then found a way to make it possible anyway. Whisper of Stars drifted closer, its form shimmering with curiosity. Captain Morrison, your success challenges our fundamental understanding of what is achievable within the known laws of physics. How do you explain this accomplishment? Jake picked up one of the crystals and held it up to the light. It sparkled with an inner glow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the station's quantum communication systems. Whisper of Stars. I think the problem is that everyone was so focused on the laws of physics that they forgot about the laws of engineering. What do you mean by this distinction? Dr. Helen Torres joined the conversation, carrying a tablet full of data that was going to revolutionize galactic science. Physics tells you what's theoretically possible, she explained. Engineering tells you how to make it actually work in practice. The physics of Kepler 442c were well understood. The engineering solutions just needed some creative thinking. Commander Vexhal was examining their equipment with growing amazement. Captain, your heat shields combine our advanced temperature regulation technology with your primitive metal construction. This combination should not be more effective than our pure systems. Lisa looked up from her explanation to the Zephyrian engineers. Commander, your systems are designed to be perfect under ideal conditions. Our systems are designed to work under terrible conditions. When you combine them, you get systems that are perfect under terrible conditions. A crowd was gathering around Rick Barnes as he demonstrated his explosive techniques. The Korath military specialists were taking detailed recordings of everything he did, apparently fascinated by the idea of combining precision quantum tools with brute force chemical reactions. You see, Rick was explaining to his alien audience, the quantum drill gives you perfect accuracy, but sometimes accuracy isn't enough. Sometimes you need to move a lot of rock very quickly, and that's where good old-fashioned explosives come in handy. A Korath engineer raised one armored hand. But how do you ensure that the explosive force doesn't damage the precision equipment? Rick grinned and pulled out a device that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and optimism. You don't avoid the explosions. You design the equipment to survive the explosions. Everything we build is designed to keep working, even when things go wrong. Amy Phillips was surrounded by alien geologists who were studying her planetary survey data with expressions of wonder and confusion. Dr. Phillips, one of them asked, your survey techniques identified crystal formations that our most advanced sensors missed completely. How is this possible? Amy showed them her equipment, which looked primitive compared to the sleek alien technology but had produced far better results. Your sensors are designed to look for what you expect to find. Our sensors are designed to look for what we don't expect to find. When you're working in unknown conditions, sometimes it's better to be prepared for surprises. Jake was watching his crew share their knowledge with alien scientists and engineers who had spent centuries trying to solve problems that humans had fixed in a few hours. The aliens weren't stupid or incompetent. They were brilliant beings with technology far more advanced than anything humans had developed, but they had been thinking about impossible problems in ways that made them impossible to solve. Commander Vexhal approached Jake with a formal-looking document. Captain Morrison, the Galactic Council has asked me to present you with the Medal of Impossible Achievement, the highest honor we can bestow for accomplishing tasks that were previously considered beyond the reach of any known species. Jake accepted the medal, which was made from some kind of metal that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Commander, I appreciate the honor, but I have to ask, what are you going to do when the next impossible problem comes up? We were hoping, General Crox said, stepping forward with his own formal document, that you and your crew would consider taking on additional consulting work. The Korath Empire has several projects that our engineers have declared impossible. Whisper of Stars floated closer with what appeared to be a contract written in light. The Ethereal Collective would also like to engage your services. We have encountered certain physical challenges that seem to require your unique approach to problem solving. Jake looked at the offers and then at his crew, who were still enthusiastically explaining human engineering principles to amazed alien scientists. Lisa was sketching improvements for Zephyrian mining equipment. Rick was planning explosive solutions for Korath military applications. Amy was designing geological survey techniques that would work on planets the aliens had never thought to explore. Helen was describing quantum physics applications that were giving the ethereals new ideas about reality itself. You know what, Jake said. I think we might be interested in more consulting work. But first, we need to deliver these crystals and get the Galactic Communication Network back up to full capacity. Tony Martinez approached with a communication device that was buzzing with incoming messages. Captain, we're getting requests for interviews from news organizations across the galaxy. Apparently word has gotten out about our success and everyone wants to know how we did it. Jake looked at the device, which showed dozens of pending communication requests from species he had never heard of. What are they asking? Tony scrolled through the messages, mostly variations of, how did humans accomplish what everyone said was impossible? And what other impossible things are humans planning to make possible? Jake handed the device back to Tony. Tell them we're not doing anything special. We're just treating impossible problems like regular problems that need creative solutions. Lisa overheard and laughed. Should we mention that we're already planning to mine neutron stars? Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Jake said. We should probably finish this impossible mission before we start the next one. Commander Vexhal was studying the medal he had just presented. Captain Morrison, may I ask what you consider to be the most important factor in your success? Jake thought about the question while watching his crew continue their impromptu technology exchange with alien scientists. His people were treating beings from some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy like friendly neighbors who needed help with home improvement projects. Commander, Jake said finally, I think the most important thing is that we never believed it was actually impossible. Everyone told us it couldn't be done, but we figured they just meant nobody had tried the right way yet. General Crox nodded his massive armored head. This attitude explains much about your species. Most civilizations, when told that something is impossible, accept this limitation and seek alternative approaches. Humans appear to treat impossible as a challenge rather than a boundary. Pretty much, Jake agreed. Where I come from, impossible just means it's going to be interesting. Whisper of Stars shimmered with what might have been amusement. Captain Morrison, your species has The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had been built to inspire awe and demonstrate the unity of dozens of advanced civilizations. Its crystal dome stretched hundreds of meters overhead, and holographic displays showed real-time data from across the galaxy. Today, however, the hall was filled with confusion, amazement, and more than a little political panic. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered for an emergency session to discuss what the official records were, calling the human incident. At the center of the hall, a massive holographic display showed the mission summary from Kepler 442c, with numbers that seemed to grow more impossible every time someone looked at them. Council Leader Zarthul of the Cosmic Federation called the session to order, with a sound that resembled wind chimes made of pure mathematics. Fellow beings, the ancient entity announced, we are gathered to discuss the recent completion of mission classification. Impossible by the human mining crew, designated Morrison Alpha 7. A murmur ran through the assembly. Some species communicated through electromagnetic pulses, others through chemical releases, and a few through direct manipulation of local reality. The overall effect was like being in a library where the books were all arguing with each other. Ambassador Kexital of the Hegemony Union stood up, her crystalline form refracting light into complex patterns. Council Leader, my species has reviewed the mission data 17 times. According to our analysis, What the humans accomplished violates 14 fundamental principles of practical engineering and at least 6 basic laws of survival. The data has been verified by independent sources. Council leader Zarthul replied. The humans extracted 863 perfect quantum resonance crystals from Kepler 442c in 4 hours and 12 minutes. They did so using equipment that our technical evaluation board describes as primitive but functional beyond all logical expectations. Representative Vorman of the technical collective projected a holographic analysis into the center of the hall. We have studied their equipment designs extensively. They combined our most advanced technologies with their own crude but effective methods. The result should not work better than either system alone, yet somehow it does. Commander Vexhall of the Zephyrians activated his testimony recording. I observed their operations firsthand. The humans treated conditions that would kill most known life forms as minor inconveniences. They made modifications to critical equipment using tools that appeared to be held together with adhesive tape and determination. A representative from the quantum scholars raised what might have been a hand, if hands could be made of pure energy. Commander Vexhall, can you explain how their heat shields performed better than our most advanced thermal protection systems? They welded our heat regulation technology to their crude metal plating, Vexhall replied. When I asked their chief engineer about this approach, she said, and I quote, "Your stuff is designed to work perfectly under perfect conditions. Our stuff is designed to work okay under terrible conditions. Put them together and you get something that works perfectly under terrible conditions." General Crox of the Korath Empire stood up, his massive armored form towering over most of the other representatives. The humans' approach to problem solving is unlike anything in our military database. When they encountered obstacles, they did not seek to overcome them through superior force or advanced technology. Instead, they found ways to make the obstacles work in their favor. Can you provide specific examples? Asked Council Leader Zarthul. Their explosives specialist, designated Barnes Rick, used the planet's geological instability to enhance their drilling efficiency. Instead of fighting against the volcanic activity, he timed his explosive charges to work with the natural rock fractures caused by seismic movement. A ethereal collective representative floated forward, its form shimmering with colors that existed only in higher dimensions. We have analyzed the quantum field measurements taken during their operation. The humans appear to have discovered principles of crystal formation that our scientists had not previously considered. What kind of principles? Asked Ambassador Kexital. They realized that Kepler 442c's extreme conditions were not obstacles to crystal formation, but necessary components of the formation process. The electromagnetic storms, acid precipitation, and thermal variations all contribute to creating the perfect environment for quantum resonance crystal growth. Representative Vorman projected additional data. Their geological specialist, designated Phillips Amy, mapped 17 additional crystal deposit sites using survey techniques that our best equipment had missed. Her methods appear to be based on looking for unexpected patterns rather than predicted formations. Council Leader Zarthul processed this information through quantum calculations that took several seconds to complete. Are you saying that the humans succeeded where we failed because they approached the problem from a fundamentally different perspective? That is correct, Vorman confirmed. We attempted to solve the problem by developing technology advanced enough to overcome the planet's hostile conditions. The humans solved the problem by developing technology that could work with the planet's hostile conditions. A representative from the Advanced Physics Consortium spoke up. We have also reviewed the human physicists' data from the individual designated Torres Helen. Her quantum field analysis suggests applications for crystal technology that we had not previously considered possible, such as using planetary-scale quantum fields for communication networks that could span entire galaxy sectors instantly. Her measurements indicate that Kepler 442c is not just a source of communication crystals, but a natural quantum communication hub that has been operating for millions of years. The assembly fell silent as the implications of this discovery spread through the hall. Several species began rapid calculations, while others initiated emergency communications with their homeworlds. Commander Vexhall continued his testimony. The humans also demonstrated problem-solving methods that prioritize practical results over theoretical perfection. When their primary drilling system encountered unexpected obstacles, They did not stop to develop better drilling technology. They simply added explosive charges to clear the obstacles more efficiently. General Crocs nodded his armored head. Their approach to equipment design follows similar principles. Everything they build is designed to continue functioning even when individual components fail. They call this redundancy, but it appears to be more than that. Their equipment actually becomes more effective under stress. Ambassador Kexital's crystalline form shifted to a deep purple color, indicating deep thought. Council leader, we must consider the broader implications of the human success. If they can accomplish tasks we consider impossible using techniques we consider primitive, what does this suggest about our approach to other unsolved problems? That is precisely why this emergency session was called, Council leader Zarthul replied. We have 47 impossible projects in our current database. Mining operations that cannot be completed, engineering challenges that have no solutions, scientific problems that have resisted analysis for centuries. Representative Vorman projected a list of unsolved galactic problems: neutron star material extraction, black hole energy harvesting, dark matter manipulation, temporal paradox resolution. Each of these has been classified as impossible by our greatest minds. And now we must ask ourselves, said the ethereal representative, whether these problems are truly impossible, or whether they simply require the human approach to become possible. A new voice joined the discussion as Captain Jake Morrison's image appeared on the hall's main communication screen. He was sitting in the New Frontiers galley with a cup of coffee, looking completely relaxed while discussing matters that were causing panic in the galaxy's highest governmental body. Captain Morrison, Council leader Zarthul said, "We are honored by your participation in this emergency session. We would like to understand your perspective on the recent mission success." Jake took a sip of his coffee and shrugged. "We just did our job, Council leader. You needed crystals extracted from a dangerous planet, so we went and extracted them. But Captain," Ambassador Kexital said, "our combined civilizations had declared this mission impossible to complete." "Yeah, we heard about that," Jake replied. "But impossible is a pretty strong word. Usually when people say something is impossible, they mean they haven't figured out how to do it yet." The assembly stirred with what might have been nervous laughter in a dozen different species communication methods. Captain Morrison, General Croc said, "Would you and your crew be interested in consulting on other projects that we have classified as impossible?" Jake looked off screen for a moment, apparently consulting with his crew. "Sure, General. We like challenging projects. What did you have in mind?" Representative Vorman projected the list of impossible projects. "We have compiled 47 engineering challenges that have resisted solution for periods ranging from decades to millennia." Jake studied the list with growing interest. "Neutron star mining looks interesting. Black hole energy harvesting could be fun. Temporal paradox resolution sounds like a good puzzle for our physicist. Yeah, I think we could work with this list." Council leader Zarthul's mathematical harmonics took on an urgent 6 months after the Kepler 442c mission. The phrase "hold my beer" had become the most feared and respected expression in galactic languages. It appeared in official government documents, military briefings, scientific journals, and diplomatic communications. Whenever someone translated those 3 words into their native language, it meant humans were about to make the impossible look routine again. Jake Morrison was sitting in the captain's chair of the New Frontier, which now bore the official designation Galactic Impossible Solutions Consultant Vessel in 17 different languages. Around him, his crew was preparing for their latest assignment, a mission that had been declared impossible by every species in the known galaxy for over 1,000 years. "Status report," Jake called out. Lisa Rodriguez looked up from her engineering station, which was now covered with technology from dozens of different species. Each piece had been modified, improved, and combined with human engineering in ways that violated every known principle of proper design, but somehow worked better than the original equipment. "All systems are green, Captain. Our neutron star mining equipment is tested and ready. The gravitational field stabilizers are working perfectly. The radiation shielding is holding steady, and the matter extraction systems are calibrated for maximum efficiency." Danny Cooper was at the navigation station, plotting a course that would take them through space-time distortions that most species considered mathematically impossible to navigate. Course laid in for Pulsar PSR J18472-345. Will be there in 18 hours using the new hyperdrive system Helen designed. Dr. Helen Torres was monitoring quantum field readings that were rewriting fundamental physics textbooks across the galaxy. The neutron star's gravitational field is creating some interesting effects. I'm reading temporal distortions that could actually help us with the mining operation if we time everything correctly. Rick Barnes was in the cargo bay, preparing equipment that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood explosives but had never heard of the word overkill. His new neutron star mining charges were based on the same principles as his planetary drilling equipment, scaled up to work in gravitational fields that could compress ordinary matter into exotic particles. Amy Phillips was studying stellar geology surveys that described planetary conditions unlike anything in known space. The neutron star's surface is made of crystallized matter that exists at densities we can barely comprehend. But according to these readings, there are extraction possibilities if we can figure out how to work with the extreme gravitational effects. Jake activated the ship's communication system to check in with their growing network of alien contacts. The main screen filled with incoming messages from species across the galaxy, all requesting human consultation on problems they had previously considered impossible. Tony, what's our current impossible project status? Tony Martinez looked up from the communication station with a grin. We've got requests from 47 different species, Captain. The Zephyrians want us to help them mine the core of a gas giant. The Korath Empire is asking if we can extract energy from a black hole. The Ethereal Collective wants to know if we can build a bridge between parallel dimensions. And that's just this week, Lisa added. Last week we got a request from the quantum scholars to help them solve time travel paradoxes. Jake smiled and took a sip of his coffee. Through the main view screen he could see Pulsar PSR J18472-345 growing larger as they approached. The neutron star was spinning at incredible speed, generating gravitational fields that could tear apart normal matter and electromagnetic radiation that could sterilize entire solar systems. To most species in the galaxy, it was a cosmic horror that demonstrated the universe's capacity for creating environments absolutely hostile to life. To Jake and his crew, it looked like their next work site. Any word from the Galactic Council about our success rate? Jake asked. Tony scrolled through the official communications. According to the latest reports, we've completed 17 impossible missions in the past 6 months. Our success rate is 100%, and our solutions are being implemented across the galaxy. What kind of solutions? Well, the crystal extraction techniques we developed on Kepler 442c are now being used on 43 different worlds. The heat shield modifications Lisa designed are standard equipment for high-temperature operations. Rick's explosive techniques have revolutionized mining operations in extreme environments. Amy looked up from her stellar surveys. And Helen's quantum field research is being used to improve communication networks, transportation systems, and power generation across the galaxy. Helen was analyzing the neutron star's energy output patterns. The physics applications we've discovered are being taught in universities across the galaxy. Apparently, the human approach to impossible problems is now a required course in several advanced engineering programs. Jake laughed and stood up to walk over to the main view screen. The neutron star was now close enough that they could see its surface features. What looked like solid ground was actually matter compressed to densities that existed nowhere else in the universe. The star's magnetic field was strong enough to affect their instruments from millions of kilometers away. You know, Jake said, when we started this consulting business, I thought we'd be helping aliens solve a few difficult engineering problems. And now? Lisa asked. Now we're apparently teaching the entire galaxy how to think about impossible problems. Danny was making final course corrections as they approached the neutron star. The gravitational effects are getting stronger. I'm having to compensate for time dilation, space-time curvature, and electromagnetic interference that would scramble most navigation systems. Rick's voice came over the comm from the cargo bay. Mining equipment is ready to deploy. I've got charges that should work in gravitational fields, strong enough to turn ordinary atoms into quark soup. This is going to be the most interesting mining operation in galactic history. Amy was taking readings that would have been impossible to obtain 6 months ago. I'm detecting material formations on the neutron star's surface that could revolutionize technology across the galaxy. These crystallized matter structures have properties that don't exist in normal space. Jake activated the ship's external communications to check in with the observation fleets that were monitoring their mission from what they considered a safe distance. The screen filled with familiar faces from species across the galaxy. Commander Vexhal of the Zephyrians appeared first. Captain Morrison, our sensors indicate you are approaching gravitational fields that should compress your ship into a point smaller than an atom. How are you maintaining structural integrity? Same way we always do, Commander, Jake replied. We built our equipment to work under impossible conditions instead of trying to avoid the impossible conditions. General Crox's armored face filled another section of the screen. Captain, my military engineers have analyzed your approach trajectory. According to our calculations, you should have been torn apart by tidal forces 3 hours ago. Lisa looked up from her engineering station. General, your calculations assume we're trying to fight against the gravitational effects. We're actually using them to help stabilize our approach. The neutron star's gravity well is acting like a natural guidance system. Whisper of Stars materialized on the communication screen, its ethereal form shifting through colors that indicated extreme curiosity, mixed with cosmic concern. Captain Morrison, you are attempting to extract materials from an object whose gravitational field approaches the theoretical limits of what matter can endure. How do you expect to survive this operation? Helen looked up from her physics calculations. Whisper of Stars, we've learned that theoretical limits usually just mean nobody's found the right practical approach yet. The neutron star's extreme conditions aren't obstacles to overcome, they're tools to use. Jake walked back to his captain's chair and sat down. Around him, his crew was preparing to do something that every species in the galaxy had declared impossible for over 1,000 years. They were going to land on a neutron star, extract materials that existed nowhere else in the universe, and do it all with the same casual confidence they had brought to every other impossible project. All right, people, Jake announced. We're approaching the most extreme environment any human has ever encountered. The gravity is strong enough to flatten us into pancakes. The magnetic field could disrupt our molecular structure. The surface temperature could vaporize our atoms. He paused and looked around at his crew, who were all grinning with the kind of enthusiasm that came from facing challenges that would terrify most rational beings. In other words, it's Tuesday. The crew laughed and went back to their preparations. Through the main view screen, the neutron star continued to grow larger, its impossible density and unimaginable conditions becoming their next workplace. Tony's communications station started buzzing with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Captain, I'm getting reports that betting pools have opened on 17 different worlds. The odds against our success are currently running about 1,000,000 to 1. What are we betting? Rick asked from the cargo bay. The usual, Jake replied. That impossible just me,